There we go. We are now recording. We are live. Welcome so much. Goodness. Thank you so much and welcome. Thank you for being here, folks. So just to touch base, make sure you're in the session you want to be because we got two going on right now. We're in best practices in prevention and harm reduction, social media, and campaigns. Now, before I turn it over to our wonderful panelists, I'm going to go through the same spiel I've been going through every session. So like you heard with the voice that just said, it is being recorded. We will attach these recordings into Whova and then later on into our website starting early next week. So keep an eye out for that. Speaking of recordings, if you would like a certificate of attendance, you got to watch at least 5 sessions live or recorded by September 15th. We are not doing CEs or CEUs this year, but you can get that certificate of attendance if you'd like. Now, at the conclusion of the entire series, we're going to be sending out a survey that we love for everyone to complete. Feedback for us, feedback for our speakers, and it'll help us organize and make an even bigger session or bigger series for next year. Now, if you have any questions throughout this session, throughout the whole series, please reach out. I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat box and the Q&A box in Whova. I'll do my best to for anyone who might be in Zoom as well. My ask, if you want to be nice to your moderator, that's me. Please keep comments in the chat box and questions in the Q&A box. That makes organizing much, much easier. Now, you don't need to hear me ramble anymore. Let me pass it on to our panelists. So, folks, it is all yours.
Hi. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Melissa Temke. I am the Behavioral Health Communications Manager for the Healthcare Authority. So what does that mean? So that means that myself and my team support communications for HCA's Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. And some of that support includes putting on public education campaigns. So when we want to get a message out, we get funding and we create campaigns to get messages out. So myself and my coworker Ann Paulson and I are going to go through those campaigns with you today, just a few of them. And so I will hand it over to Ann and go ahead and take it away. Welcome.
Thank you. And as Melissa said, my name's Ann Paulson. I'm the State Opioid Response Communications Consultant. So I work on Melissa's team and I support all of the sections of DBH, the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery at HCA. And I work on a lot of these campaigns with Melissa. Next slide. So we wanted to highlight some of our campaigns that we have that offer toolkits. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting in developing a campaign, and we want to provide the material that comes out of these campaigns free for use to anyone and everyone around the state to help share the message, help get the information out. So we're going to go over some of our campaigns that have toolkits. And the first one we're going to kick off with is Friends for Life, which is our most recent opioid campaign. The audience, we have two phases. One is about to launch tomorrow, but phase one launched in April, and it was for people, it was directed towards people who use drugs in the 18 to 25 age range. And the upcoming phase is for youth 12 to 18. And so, like I said, that's launching tomorrow. It's also going to include some tool kit material for parents and caregivers and prevention coordinators. The objective for this campaign is to really educate on fentanyl and overdose awareness and sort of include normalizing naloxone, helping people recognize and respond to an opioid overdose. The phase one was a heavy harm reduction focus, and phase two is a bit more primary prevention. When the slides are sent out, I believe they will be, you can click on these links and find the toolkit and the website. Our first phase we developed with initial focus groups of people who use drugs or had some lived experience. And we also included syringe service programs as subject matter experts during the development of the campaign. We sent the syringe service programs surveys that they used with people who were using their services. That was a way for us to get feedback from the audience that we're trying to reach. Our current toolkit offerings include rack cards, posters, flyers, promotional items, videos, social media, and a digital kit. So there's a lot to offer in what is in the phase 1 of this campaign. In our next phase, we have developed the material and the messaging with prevention coordinators. We did a landscape review and we did audience research. We had listening sessions with people who work in prevention or harm reduction to review the upcoming materials for their usefulness and their message, and make sure that we were really capturing what gaps there are in understanding fentanyl from this 12 to 18 perspective. This campaign is going to have customizable presentations for parents and youth, informational brochures, conversation starters, promotional materials, and we also included some activities for the classroom for middle school and high school ages. We'll have more posters, affinity items, and everything is differentiated for the middle school age range and the high school age range. And so the toolkit link in this will only show phase 1 right now, but next week, phase 2 materials should be up. And now I'm going to pass it to Melissa to go over the next campaign.
Awesome. Thanks, Anne. So in 2018, way back in 2018, there was a noticeable opioid crisis that was happening in Washington State. And so the Healthcare Authority and the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery developed the campaign, which is called Starts With One. And the goal of Starts With One is to educate young people, their parents, and older adults on the importance of locking up your opioid medications, not sharing medications, and on the dangers of opioid misuse. We have added and expanded to that campaign. So we have a component of that campaign, which is a pharmacy pilot program. Actually not a pilot anymore, it's just a pharmacy program. But we have pharmacists educate people who are picking up opioid prescriptions on the importance of locking up their medications, and they even have an opportunity to take home a locking bag if they don't already have one. We also have a partnership with the Washington State Hospital Association, where they educate providers through webinars and various materials on how to talk to patients and how to talk to providers about not automatically prescribing opiates if somebody has surgery or if somebody has an injury, but starting with something like ibuprofen and Tylenol or something like ice and heat, and then moving up as needed. So both of those programs are going really well. For the Starts With One program, one really amazing part of that program is if you go to the Starts With One website, which is right there on your slides, you can find all kinds of toolkits. We have rec cards, we have posters, we have digital and print ads that can be, you can put your own logo on them and they can be put out. We have conversation starters, and we have materials also for hospitals and for pharmacies. So I think it's a really great resource to check out. And Anne is going to talk about For Our Lives.
Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So another campaign right now is For Our Lives, which is an opioid fentanyl overdose awareness campaign specifically for tribal audiences around Washington. And it was developed in close collaboration with tribes, tribal leaders, members of tribal prevention services. We want to include the platform used to be known as Washington Tribal Opioid Solutions, and it's sort of been renamed, reframed. And the link here for Native Lives is going to have a lot of information. It includes opioid awareness, overdose and suicide prevention, responding to an opioid overdose, and it also includes culturally significant messaging and resources. It is a very broad campaign, and there's a lot of toolkit materials on all of those topics. There are rack cards, videos, digital assets, wallet cards, posters, flyers, promotional items, and everything in that toolkit that's offered can be customized for the specific tribe, can be customized with specific messaging that you want to include or change. Specific items that we don't have right now, we can offer if you reach out to us through the link on the website. So this is, it has a lot of the same information right now, as the Friends for Life campaign, but it is a different audience and it's a different focus. And it is also going to grow over time. And now I'm going to pass it back to Melissa.
Awesome, thank you. So we have various campaigns that so if we were going to chat with you today about all of our campaigns and all of the things that they have to offer, we could literally take an hour doing that. So we're not going to do that today. But what I do want to just touch on is I want to talk about our other campaigns. So can we go ahead and go to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. So we have these several campaigns that I just want to go over fairly quickly. The first one is called Focus On, and the goal of Focus On is really to prevent underage drinking, but it also is about using good habits as parents and as family members of young people of showing good habits. So Focus On has a great, I wouldn't exactly call it a toolkit, like if you are an agency and you want to use it as a handout, it doesn't really work super well as that, but it does work really well if you want to talk. It has lots of activities that you can do for wellness and kind of little journaling and activities. So I think if you are looking for something for families or something for young people, it's a really great resource. I would check it out. We have Start Talking Now, which is specifically for parents and caregivers, and it has a ton of resources about how to talk to your teens about substance use. We also have Not a Moment Wasted, which is substance use prevention for college age youth. And that has a fantastic doctor, Dr. Kilmer, he's done all kinds of things. He's very charismatic. He has all kinds of videos on there that you can watch, and he's hilarious. And he did a study where he took college age youth, they were all over 21, and some of them thought that they were drinking and some of them thought that they were not drinking, and nobody was actually drinking. And the people in the study who were not given alcohol and weren't drinking actually felt as if they were drinking alcohol. So kind of the point of that is that it's not really what you're drinking, it's about who you're with. I think it's just an interesting study. I recommend watching it. We also have Start Your Path, which is not about substance use at all, but we know that there is a massive shortage of behavioral health providers right now. And so this page, this site is really geared towards 18 to 25-year-olds and getting them interested in a career in the behavioral health care field. And there's all kinds of videos. You can take a quiz to see what kind of field you might match well with. And then finally, we have No Shame in Your Brain. And this is all about reducing stigma around mental health. So making it okay to say you're not okay. There is great resources on this page. There is posters that you can order and get printed out. So I recommend checking out that site as well. Thanks. Okay, so actually I still get to talk because now I'm going to transition. Oh, no, it's you again. Okay, go for it, Anne.
No, it's not me. You go back. It's Nikki's turn.
Sorry.
Before we move on,
next slide, please. Yeah.
There is a question about the Starts With One campaign. So the question was, we attempted to have pharmacists and physicians join on locking up medication, but it was difficult to get them on board. They said they only saw the patients for a little bit and didn't have the time to talk to them about it. Did you have any of those challenges as well? And if so, how did you address it?
We did have that challenge. So when we started the pharmacy pilot program, it launched with COVID. I mean, it launched in April of 2020 when everything was shutting down. And initially we thought we would have that challenge with pharmacists, but we actually had that challenge. We had that challenge with them initially because people couldn't go in person and pick up medication. And then we had that challenge later when vaccines became available because they were so busy with vaccines, they didn't have time to talk to somebody about locking up their medications. And so what we've developed is we have training videos that they can access, just talking with them and educating them on the importance of it. We have been able to get buy-in on the program, but I understand it is challenging, and there is always that, we don't have time, we barely have enough time to talk to our patients as it is. And do you have anything you'd add to that?
Just with our specific pharmacy program, we've heard that feedback and we've modified our program. And I think a lot of pharmacists understand the importance of it. And so we've modeled sort of how you can have that conversation and keep it pretty short. And then we've loosened and lightened some of the administrative burden to participate in the program. And we're actually launching that soon. So we'll have follow up on whether or not that changes their ability to participate. But we've had really good support in theory, and then it's just been hard to implement. But the pharmacies that we worked with have all been really great at trying as hard as they can to make it sort of a normal practice. It's just been a variable result because of those things Melissa noted.
I know that one of the things too that we've seen at a local level from that is starting our pharmacies off with tinier projects first. So giving them a print material or a rack card that they can put on the counter, because while the pharmacy, especially in a rural area, may have one staff person there at any time and genuinely not have the time to have that 10-minute conversation, we've started them with stuff that they can put on a counter where when folks are in that massive, wonderful line, you have to wait in at the pharmacy, they can see stuff and grab it or grab stuff on their way out. Maybe they don't have time to talk to the pharmacist either. Maybe they don't feel comfortable asking questions but want resources. And so they're able to have that little tiny tidbit of information, which then has gone on also to spark questions being asked to the pharmacist. So then being able to demonstrate to the pharmacist and the pharmacy that there is local interest in it to kind of show that it should be made a priority because people are eager for that information. So give the power to the folks who are accessing the resources to kind of then flip it to show the pharmacy that it should be made a priority and that they can make a little bit more time to do it.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for answering that.
Okay, I'll jump in here next. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Moline. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a health educator at the Washington State Department of Health, and I manage 9 of our substance use prevention education campaigns. I'm going to tell you about 10 of them today. There's one that is not mine, but that I wanted to give a shout out to and make sure folks know about. So we can go to the next slide, Alex. Okay, so starting off with UCAN. Out of all the campaigns I'll talk about today, this might be the one that most of the audience is familiar with. We put a lot of our resources towards this campaign. This is our youth cannabis prevention campaign. You'll notice with this campaign and really lots of our others that we lean into the protective factors a lot with our messaging, that very rarely will you actually see like the word cannabis, marijuana, drugs. We're really focusing on the things that prevent young people from using those substances. So really messaging and providing resources around mental health, healthy coping, forming positive relationships, and other protective factors. And you can see that reflected on some of the examples that I have here on the slide. If you were to visit our website, our toolkit, our social channels, I think you would see that reflected there too. On all of these slides, you'll see the website URL, the toolkit URL, and the password to that toolkit. They're password protected just so we have some, sense of control around who is getting in there and using those things, but really encourage any of y'all on the call today to get in there, poke around, use those materials. Let me know if you have any questions. Most of the materials in the toolkit are just ready to go for you. We have, for example, lots of social posts that are like, we have the social, the graphic and post copy that you can just download and post and you're good to go. So try to make that really as easy as possible for partners to take these pieces and just kind of like plug and play, use them in their communities in that way. One other thing I wanted to say around our messaging and how we kind of focus on more of the protective factors, we have continued to do that, and I guess have kind of always done that, but have known that that's the direction we wanted this campaign to continue after the audience research that we conducted earlier this year. Time is weird, the last few years. I'm thinking, is that right? Was it last year? Recently, the audience research we conducted recently. We know that for young people, those messages are much more, palatable and impactful. We're not just kind of doing that willy-nilly. We're asking our audience, which of these messages really stick with you and really would motivate you And so that's kind of how we have landed on our messaging in this campaign and others. We really do try to prioritize audience research and message testing every once in a while, like every 5 years, give or take, kind of as needed. Anyway, okay, we can go on to the next campaign. Next slide, Alex. So this is Choose You, our youth vaping prevention campaign. This is brand new. It just launched last year, or earlier this year. Sorry, again, I'm struggling with the concept of time today. This is sort of a really nice complement to UCAN Choose You. That wasn't an accident. They work really well together. And we sometimes use these two brands in tandem, use, UCAN to push out Choose You messages. So you might see some of these things, assets from each of these campaigns coexisting in the same spaces, because really they're for the same audience, youth in Washington State, and they have some of the same objectives. With Choose You, though, it's preventing tobacco and vaping use as opposed to cannabis, but lots of through lines between those two campaigns. Same sort of overall vibe, I would say. This campaign also has a website, a toolkit. You'll find fewer things in this toolkit just because this is a brand new campaign. We're still building it, but still lots of good assets for partners to utilize in that toolkit. Everything from, lots of social posts. We really, in our youth and young adult toolkits, you'll see more social and digital assets than print, because we know that we're more likely to reach youth on, digital platforms. Whereas in our parent and adult campaign toolkits, you might see things that are intended to be used in print, like newspapers, magazines. I would say most 13-year-olds aren't reading the newspaper regularly, so maybe doesn't make sense to have assets specifically for that placement in our youth campaigns. But you will see lots of social posts, ads for digital radio like Spotify, Pandora, streaming services, etc. So we can move on to the next slide. This is not a moment wasted, which Melissa touched on. So we co-fund and co-manage this campaign with the Healthcare Authority. This is one that we're due to do some audience research on. I talked about audience research earlier, and it's been a minute since we've done it with this audience and for this campaign. So we're actually just getting started, just getting ready to launch audience research with this audience, which I'm really excited about because it's, like I said, it's been a minute and we kind of need to breathe new life into this campaign. One thing that we'll be looking into in that research is what are the differences, similarities between young adults who attend college and those who don't, because right now it's very young adults, very focused on young adults who attend college. And it feels like we're sort of missing this whole subsection of young adults who don't attend college. So we'll be really diving into that in our research, and I'm excited for what we learn from that, which we'll of course use to develop new assets, which will be then in the toolkit for folks to use. So there are plenty of resources and assets in the toolkit right now, but next year there will be even more for you to use. Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is Under the Influence of You for parents and other influential adults. This campaign works sort of in tandem with the Start Talking Now campaign that Melissa mentioned earlier. So they're kind of two distinct brands, but like this campaign, the ads for this campaign will direct folks to the Start Talking Now website. So they really sort of work together, but are two distinct campaigns, but still with the same goal and the same audience. So really want to encourage parents, caregivers, other influential adults in the lives of young people to talk to those young people about the risks and consequences of using substances, and also to help support their mental health and well-being as sort of a preventive measure against the initiation of substance use. So again, this directs folks to Start Talking Now. There is a toolkit for this campaign where we have a big variety of assets. Again, there's maybe slightly more print assets available in this campaign as opposed to, in our youth campaigns, it's a lot of digital, but there are still digital assets available. I should also mention this for all of our campaigns, actual already like printed materials are available to order through the ADAI clearinghouse. Please feel free to reach out to me if you want more information about that, but it's totally free of charge for folks to order already printed materials. So if you don't have the budget to print your materials, we have a lot of them that we would be more than happy to send to you. The other thing I'll say about this campaign is we have translated or transcreated rather. We try to be really thoughtful about every aspect of the design as we are translating. So it's not just the words that we're translating word for word, but thinking about, okay, like, does the imagery still make sense? Like, you know, all of the things. So I tend to use the word transcreate. So we've transcreated lots of assets into over 30 languages with this campaign. And most of those in-language materials are available in the toolkit. Next slide, please. And then this is our last statewide campaign, Know This About Cannabis. So this is for adult consumers, folks over the age of 21 who are using cannabis non-medically. This is another one that is, we need to do some audience research around. It's been a minute since we have, you know, kind of taken the pulse on what adult consumers need in Washington State, where are the gaps in knowledge, how can we best support them to, you know, make healthy and safe choices around cannabis use. So there will be audience research launching soon for this campaign, and then again, some new assets available for folks to use both on the website and the toolkit later, well, let's say 2024, sometime in 2024. So excited to see what comes from that. And then I have one more slide, I think, Alex. Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout to these 5 tailored media campaigns. So I just talked through our statewide campaigns that are for like all youth, for example, across Washington State, or all young adults. But these 5 tailored campaigns are for, they've been tailored for the 5 priority populations we've identified at the Department of Health within our, you know, cannabis and commercial tobacco prevention program. So that's Hispanic and Latino youth, Black, African American, and African immigrant youth, American Indian, Alaska Native youth, Asian American, Pacific Islander youth, and then LGBTQ+ identifying youth. So these are all their own campaign with very distinct brands, specific sort of messages and channels to reach the youth, depending on what the best fit for that population is. So I just wanted to mention these. My goal this year is to make these more visible and more accessible for partners to promote and utilize. So just wanted to give a nod to these and make sure they were mentioned today. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Nikki. That's awesome. I love our partnership with the Department of Health. It's great. Okay, so here we go. We're talking about social media. So why would you use social media? Well, it's there. It's available for one thing. So if you want to use social media to make a difference or a change or impact your community, there are some simple tips that you can do to make that a little bit easier. So the first thing is you really want to think about what you are wanting people to know, and then what you want them to do with what they know. So when we were doing the Starts With One campaign, one of the biggest components of that campaign is lock up medications, just lock your medications up. We want people to know that that's important. We want them to do it. We also want them to take back their medication. So that's the thing. So it's about deciding what you want people to know, and then what do you want them to do. So you want to use one idea at a time. So Starts With One campaign has a whole bunch of different ideas about opioids and not sharing prescriptions and locking up meds and taking back meds. But for social media alone, you want to pick what out of those, all of those messages, what message you want to share, and then share that specific message out so that people don't get confused. When people often are on social media, most of the time they're on their phone, they're scrolling, they don't want to read something, they don't want to think it through, they want to see it and know it right then and there. You also want to really think about who your specific audience is. So for instance, we have a campaign, Start Talking Now, and that campaign is really geared towards parents and caregivers, that campaign is a very different campaign than, say, Focus On, which is geared towards younger people. So you really want to know who you're trying to reach and the best way to reach them. You also want to be really relevant and engaging. So why would people care about locking up medications? Why would they care about your post? What will help them notice it? What will be eye-catching? What's trending? What do you know that's trending that you could do? You also want to use visuals to enhance your messaging. So pictures, warm photos, there's a lot of, so I think sometimes when you're doing communications, there is a tendency to kind of go dark. And so if you're talking about medications or you're talking about substance use disorder, there is a lot of visuals about people using or people in despair, and that's tempting, but those are really scare tactics and they don't work. So you really want to think about the ways to message without using scare tactics, and by being real and engaging with people. So that is all about social media. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Okay, and we have Thurston County Public Health. Welcome.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, I'm Katie Strozik. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the opioid response coordinator at Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. I will say we have much smaller campaigns being housed at the local health jurisdiction than both DOH and HCA have. But I'll talk a little bit at the end about how we're able to braid local campaign efforts with the great tools that our friends at the state develop as well. So Alex, next slide. Thanks. So most of our campaign messaging comes from our Thurston County Opioid Response Task Force. We have multiple sub-work groups in that task force, 2 of them being prevention, so primary prevention, and then overdose as well. And a lot of our messaging and materials are developed within those groups specifically. So we're not just developing them in a silo of public health professionals, we're developing them with treatment providers, people with lived experience, other direct service folks in the community. So we're able to get a wide variety of input on our materials before they're released to the public. We've kind of found that developing things just in the public health vacuum isn't always helpful. We forget to use general language that the public may know. We make assumptions about things. And so being able to kind of look at it from multiple perspectives has been really helpful. And it's also helped us be able to identify needs that we don't always identify internally. So having different stakeholders at the table every time we're working on developing our campaigns has enabled us to kind of step away. It's happened a lot, where we look at public health and we're like, there's so much information about safe storage. Why would we need to create anything? And it turns out that we have populations that we're missing, or there's just general information that isn't quite reached by state campaigns. So it gives us another lens to look through. One of our campaigns that we did through our prevention work group, I believe it was last year, was looking at radio ads on Spanish radio specifically. We've done a lot as a local health jurisdiction in English, and we realized that one of the populations that we were not reaching is individuals whose primary language is Spanish. And we were missing that both through print media and other types of media as well, including our social media posts, because while we do run things also in Spanish, it definitely is not run as often as those posts in English are. So we partnered with Bustos Media, which has a reach across Western Washington. If you look at the map of Western Washington, it pretty much goes the entirety of up and down Washington, all the way over to the coast. So this partnership was really great because we were able to reach folks outside of just Thurston County. We acknowledge a lot of the time that while we have Thurston County residents, due to our proximity of other counties and where our major cities are located, our folks, especially in our rural areas, are not always looking for Thurston County services. So our folks in our South County may be going to Lewis County, or our folks in the northern part of Thurston County may be going to Pierce. So Bustos was a great partnership for us because it enabled us to get a broader message out across a larger population with resources, instead of just doing a campaign for Thurston County where we essentially told people to come to Olympia for services or similar resources. So we intended to target folks who were Spanish speaking, primarily those who are age 18 and over. And we did a whole host of different messages. So we ran about 5 to 6 different short ad spots around safe disposal, medication storage, overdose response, and naloxone access. This allowed us to kind of get a variety of messages out to the public. We didn't want to focus just on safe disposal and storage. We also wanted to give folks ways that they could access naloxone and really give them the full continuum all the way from primary prevention to overdose response. Next slide. So here are 2 radio ad examples that we did. On one side of the screen is about naloxone access, and on the other side of the screen is about safe medication disposal options. I'm not going to read them word for word. You can read them on the screen. But on both of these, we did what we often do, and we partnered with other statewide resources for our messaging. So we found Thurston County, we wanted to run Spanish targeted ads, but especially if we're going to run it across county lines, it's not helpful for us to direct someone to a Thurston County based website. That person who lives in South Thurston County, who's going to go to Lewis County, doesn't care when they go to the website, and we have no options for Centralia and Chehalis because they're never going to come up to Olympia to get rid of their meds. So we really looked at where we could partner to get the most bang for our buck. And for medication disposal, that's partnering and directing people to Med Project, where they can hear our targeted local message, hear the idea, and then when they think and say, oh, I'd like to know where I can dispose of my meds, they're directed to Med Project, who keeps the statewide list of disposal options. It's kept updated, it's got additional information on it, and it's one less thing then that we have to maintain locally as well. So it really means that at the local level, our lift is creating the message and getting it out, rather than creating the message, getting it out to people, creating the resource, maintaining and updating the resource, which oftentimes for local health departments, there is just not that staff capacity or that funding capacity to support long-term. And we did a similar thing with our naloxone access message. We directed folks to stopoverdose.org. We partner a lot with the University of Washington's ADAI materials just because they're developed faster than we can develop things at our local department. They're readily available, and they're fantastic fact-based information. So we directed folks to stopoverdose.org, which, if you're not familiar with that website, has a great interactive map tool where you can enter a zip code, find where you can get naloxone near you. It tells folks about talking to their medical care provider if that's appropriate for them. It has information about the standing order and the legalities of accessing naloxone, and it directs to the free Washington mail-based naloxone program. So instead of telling folks, here's a phone number for Thurston County Public Health that you can call to get naloxone, this enabled us to reach a broader population who may not want to talk to us as public health about their drug use. They may be more comfortable getting it by mail or going to a pharmacy, and they're able to access all of that information at once with the link that we've provided and then make that decision for themselves. So once again, with that, we took on the lift of getting the message out and then kind of put the decision in the hand of those who listen to the message to make the decision that's appropriate for them about where they're going to access services, what type of services are appropriate for them, and where they would like to go from there. Next slide. One of the bigger things we've done is a Naloxone Saves Live campaign. You can see the art and the graphic for it on the screen. We partnered with a local artist here in Olympia who has lived experience with drug use, who works in harm reduction, to develop this really awesome graphic that we've used. It really was intended to increase visibility and conversations around naloxone while also addressing stigma. While we looked, we wanted something that was essentially pretty and really aesthetically pleasing to be able to put on materials and put within the community. We've found that a lot of the general public kind of gets the ick or gets scared off when we talk about drug use and immediately associates naloxone carrying with drug use. And especially if they're not around drug use, that turns them off from wanting to have any conversation around naloxone. It builds a further wall of stigma, and it just prevents any efforts we have moving forward from there. So by developing something that was pretty and a conversation starter, we were able to get more information out around naloxone access, what it is, where you can access it, the laws around it, and everything associated with it, because folks were curious when they saw the art. They wanted to know what naloxone was. It wasn't a scary thing to talk about, and we really wanted to move it and normalize it so that naloxone and overdose response could be seen similar to just like basic first aid, knowing how to use an AED, and less like something that folks associated as a scary drug thing to respond to. We've used this graphic on print media, our social media posts, and different swag items in the community. With developing this graphic, we really wanted to have it for consistency purposes as well. With public health, we're often limited in what we can develop funding-wise, and so we wanted to have something that was recognizable that we could use in a multi-purpose way. So by having this graphic, now we've launched it a few years ago within our community. We've had incredible community response to it now, and folks recognize it, they tell their friends about it, and they know that whenever they see something with this graphic, what it's going to relate to, that it's about overdose response, and they share it on with other folks. We've also used this graphic to pair directly with our overdose response education and different information about naloxone access. So when we've developed print media around this, we have cards that talk about the mail-based naloxone program. They have this graphic on it. The presentations that we use around overdose response have this graphic, and we'd bring the swag to it as well so that folks have that familiarity. It creates consistency across our overdose messaging and materials and gets folks familiar and gets folks talking. Next slide. So one of the great things that we developed is the actual kind of tangible things to go along with this. It's great to have print messaging and information about where to access, but one of the things that we found is that folks are a lot more likely to talk to you when you have free stuff to offer them. It gets the conversation going. I mean, we saw it just right in front of us when we went to our fair this summer. At our local fair, folks would stop by our table. They would peruse completely over all of the great print material we have in education. And then they'd see stickers and buttons, and it held them at the table long enough for us to have this conversation with them because they were curious about what the graphic was. So with this art, we've developed buttons, stickers, magnets. We also have large window clings. One of the things with our campaign that we identified was there was a gap in knowing where you could go in and get naloxone. So we used this art so that there's public facing information about where you can run into a business if there is an overdose to get naloxone on site. We also have had success where when we train businesses, schools, things like that, we got a lot of question of, okay, we've all been trained, we're going to put the naloxone kit in this cabinet. How do we have folks know where it is? And so being able to put these stickers and magnets where naloxone is physically located in buildings and in communities has allowed for ease of access points with naloxone as well. And from here, I will turn it over to Shelley.
Thanks, Katie. That was great. I'm Shelley Little. I'm a public health nurse, and I work with Benton and Franklin counties. Next slide. So we started with an assessment and surveillance through our vital records database. And in 2020, our data was shocking. So there was over 300% increase in the industry of food service workers, and then also 100% increase in overdose deaths with construction, labor, and trade, which also coincide with the highest incidence of deaths of any occupation since 2016. So we had a real problem here, and we kind of felt like it was preventable, 100% preventable. So next slide, please. We launched a campaign called Carry a Second Chance, and we bought the carryasecondchance.com URL. And that launched last year on 8/31/22, coincidentally. It's in dual language, Spanish being the second language. And the impetus was to notice the signs of overdose, how to save a life, and also give some resources, how to order naloxone. We developed a partner toolkit and talked a whole page about stigma. So we did some data analytics through Squarespace, and users normally spend about 10 to 20 seconds per web page. And when they got to the stigma web page, they were spending 2 minutes and 34 seconds on that stigma. And that was a big deal, and they were spending just the second two runner-up was 2 minutes and 41 seconds on the resource page. So we were able to really figure out our impact within the first 3 months of this campaign. And we had a total of about 1,700 unique visitors to the website, and most direct people that contacted the website were through mobile device, and that's where that QR code came in very handy. So the toolkit, a lot of us shared our toolkit, was really tailored to these industries of restaurant workers and construction, labor, and trades. So talked about our goals and our talking points of safe practice and naloxone, how to have conversations in your family and teach signs of overdose, and then also gave them materials and where to get help on the back for suicide and recovery services, and our syringe service program also. So next slide, please. Then the media kind of branched out a little bit more over the next couple months. We put ads in the Journal of Business. We put ads in our local print Tumbleweird. We also put ads in the Focus magazine, which is for construction, labor, and trade. We did on-camera interviews and radio ads. So most of our demographic that is highly affected by overdose is a higher age group. So it's closer to like 35 to 45 than the younger age groups. So the radio ads that we bought were in that 25 plus range. They were classic rock, they were contemporary rock, and they were country for the most part. So those were some of our partnerships for our resources, and our toolkits were featured in those ads too. So next slide, please. Carrie Second Chance, we also did, we hashtagged a lot of things with our social media. We did Fentanyl Awareness Day, Poison Prevention Week, Prescription Take-Back Day, and National Fentanyl Awareness Day. And as you can see with some of these, we are marketing a lot of these to construction, labor, and trades as well. So next slide, please. This is a trending slide that shows our data from impact of what we did. Like our release was August 30th, and this just goes through the first of the year. And our contact with the Home Builders Association. In September then, we did a Cadillac On Call, which is our local hospital interview with Jim Hall. And then as we went on, you can kind of see the clicks off of the beginning of October. The Tumbleweird article was presented, and these are just hits to our website and the amount of people that reached out. And Tumbleweird Now, that local magazine, they print our ads now without payment at all. So I just picked up an issue yesterday and was thumbing through it, and sure enough, my naloxone sticker with the QR code is printed. So they like it, and so they put it in no matter what as a space filler. So yeah, we took out a Tri-City Journal of Business quarter page ad, and around the holiday season, towards the end of this graph, we had a full page ad in the newspaper and in Tumbleweird with a little wrapped bow around it. So it was essentially the same flyer. So that was that. Next slide, I think is my last slide. And Melissa talked about the impacts and how do you know the impacts of your campaign. So we use Stop Overdose as well, but we link it through Carry a Second Chance. And when we look to order naloxone, it takes it to Stop Overdose. So they're the one distributing by mail the naloxone in our area. So you can see prior to our launch, the number of naloxone kits that were ordered, and they were fairly small. We have a lot of land here, and as soon as we launched on August 28th or August 31st, they ran out of naloxone at Stop Overdose, and so they ended up. That was a really low number, even though we just launched. But then they started really picking up in October and November. So last month, I got the data for how much naloxone they shipped to the zip codes that my my two jurisdictions cover, and we ended up with over 1,800 naloxone shipped to Benton and Franklin County. And we're talking, you know, in this world about naloxone saturation and what does that mean to our community and how many. So we went through the 3-tier approach, which is the first aid kit. And then that's also like the second tier is leave behind, and the third tier is a pickup type of situation. And so I was able to go to the Amazon job site with over 350 construction workers and talk to them about naloxone and putting that in a first aid kit on every job site, but also to bringing that home. And that was during their mental health. They paired that with suicide and mental health, which are also very high in that same population. So when we looked at more of our data, it looked like 86% of the visitors used a mobile device, and it was a high probability that they accessed our website through the QR codes. So I don't want to say that enough. If you have an opportunity to put a QR code, it'd be great to put it on there. Now ours takes us to the About page. But if I was going to do it again, I would probably put a different QR code for resources and a different QR code for ordering or stigma, the page on stigma as well. So carrysecondchance.com. It's a pretty robust website for some of this information, but I think it actually gives us the primary population that we're trying to reach at this time too. So that's it for me.
There we go. I had to remind myself where the camera and mic buttons were. Y'all, that was awesome. I had such a great time looking at all the imagery, and I personally just want to say how much I appreciate the attention to art in so much of this work, because we were chatting before we went live, everyone, about the Friends for Life campaign, and I've just anecdotally heard a lot of folks really into that art, and the little daisy coming out of the naloxone box, that was great. All right, so let me look at that chat box and see if we've got any other questions coming in. While I'm refreshing the page to see, I have a question for any or all of you. Anyone can answer if you want. I've been kind of throwing this at the end of most sessions if there's time. So if folks could not attend this session or can't watch the recordings for whatever reason and saw just the headline, what is one either knowledge takeaway you'd like them to know or action step you'd like them to take from anything in this or even beyond this?
Question.
I have one
Sure.
that came to mind. Don't try to recreate the wheel. Katie mentioned Stop Overdose. Shelly mentioned Stop Overdose. We linked to stopoverdose.org. We don't need to make a whole new website just because we have campaign money. Use what's out there. Use it to build off of, use it to customize, but don't feel like you have to start from scratch. It's just a waste of effort and time when there's a lot of information accessible and available.
I think that mine would be similar to Anne's too, and just you don't have to do everything at once. You can start small. You don't have to have the print materials and the radio ad and the website and the free swag items all ready on the same day. I think people get really caught up with wanting to do things perfectly and launch a huge, massive campaign all at once. And that just isn't the reality a lot of times due to staff, funding, all kinds of other things in the world. And so even doing little bite-sized pieces can help because you can always build off of that. But the longer you wait to get messaging out, that's the longer that the population doesn't have any information that they may need. So even starting small is better than trying to wait.
I think Melissa said it great for me too, because I wrote it down. I mean, when you write stuff down, you want to try to remember them. If you want them to do something, ask them to do it. If you're really trying to get naloxone out to your community and the places that need it, ask them to get it. Ask them to have it on them and show them how to do it. So what do you want them to know and what do you want them to do, and ask them to do it.
And I would just say be strategic. It's really tempting sometimes if you want to get the word out to say, we want to get the word out. We need to do all of these social media posts, and we need to get flyers out. We need a flyer. We hear a lot. And it's not always about needing a flyer. It's about what message do you want to get out and what's the best way. Is there already flyers that exist for that message? Is there already things you can point people to? So really thinking through like what exactly it is that you want to accomplish before just making that step.
I don't know what I could add that my colleagues here haven't already hit on. I mean, I echo all of that. And I think one thing I might add, and I touched on this in my section, is just the importance of audience research and message testing, and totally recognizing that folks have very different capacity and resources to do that. So doing that on whatever scale you are able to. It's easy for us to sit here and think we know what the audience needs to hear, but it's important that we ask them, that we find out you know, what messages resonate most with them, how best to reach them. So that's just a really important step to take.
Well, excellent answers from all of you. That was, I feel like that was a great kind of final note. I'm not seeing any additional questions in the Q&A box, no chats in the chat box. So I think we can go ahead and wrap up a couple minutes early. Before I push the big end button though, please feel free. If you think of another comment or another question after the session ends, go ahead and add it in there. It's not going away anytime soon. And we're going to be paying a lot of attention in the coming days and weeks to the various chat boxes and questions throughout. We'll do the follow-up we can, and we'll poll in our colleagues if it's something we don't know on our end. Well, panelists, is there anything else, any last bit of anything you'd all like to say before we go ahead and wrap up? All right, perfect. Y'all captured it so nicely with your last answers there. All right, well, a big thank you from me to all of you, especially for bearing with my next slide, Alex. Come on, get with it. So much appreciation. Thank you so much for the work you do, not just in joining the session today, but all the massive amount of effort you put behind the scenes with the campaigns and every other aspect of your jobs there. Well, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your well, I almost said weekend, goodness, weekend afternoon. And I'll go ahead and push that big red button now. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.